Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham Yahushai, Bahasham Recha Gudash. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And today we're going to go into the book of Exodus, the 34th chapter. And the Lord Yahweh said unto Moses, Hew thee 2 tables of stone, like unto the first, and I will write upon these tables the words that were in the first tables, which thou breakest, being the tablets in which the Lord had written the commandments on. And be ready in the morning, and come up in the morning unto Mount Sinai, and present thyself there to me in the top of the mount. And no man shall come up with thee, because remember the first go around, he came there with the elders, and then really with Aaron and his sons, and then Joshua. But Aaron and the rest of the elders, they stayed back. However, this time the Lord said, no, it's just going to be Moses. So it says, and let no man come up with thee, neither let any man be seen throughout all the mount. So nobody should be on that mountain or even in close proximity. Neither let the flocks nor herds feed before that mount. So they shouldn't even be around there. And he hewed 2 tables of stone like unto the first. And Moses rose up, and the hewing is to cut out, right? Because we're dealing with stone here. So when you go into that word, pasal, to hew, to cut, right? So you basically chopped out, with some tool, right, that would fit for this. I don't know, a pickaxe or something. The 2 stones in that manner in which he did, or the first 2 were. All right, so continuing on. And Moses rose up early in the morning and went up onto Mount Sinai, as the Lord Yahweh had commanded him, and took in his hand the 2 tables of stone. And the Lord descended in the cloud, and stood with him there, and proclaimed the name of the Lord Yahweh. So this cloud, which would likely be a chariot, basically descended, right? Basically pulled up at that mount where Moses is, came down nice and low, and he could hear from it this sound, all right, the proclamation of the name of the Lord. And the Lord passed by him, or by before him. This would be the chariot, and proclaimed the Lord Yahweh, the Lord Yahweh, the Most High, merciful and gracious, long-suffering and abundant in goodness and truth. So this is like an announcement, like an opening, right, before somebody makes their way there, kind of like the verbal rolling out of the red carpet. You kind of see this in wrestling, right? How they'll announce the titles and all of that, or even at the announcement of a king or a ruler. Most this, most that, most this, that, and then they'll make their way out there. It says, keeping mercy for thousands, forgiving iniquity and transgression and sin, and that will by no means clear the guilty, so to acquit the wicked, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children, and upon the children's children, on to the 3rd and to the 4th generation. And this is like a repeat, right? Because we've gone through this before. I think this was in Exodus 20 when the Lord showed himself, right? Let me see here. Is it 20? Maybe they misled me with that one. But yeah, we have seen that one before. I just forget exactly which chapter it was in that we read it. But long story short, as it says, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children. Now we know this doesn't necessarily mean that if a father sins, the child will pay for it, because the Lord made that clear that that's not going to be the case. The only time where the descendants would pay is if the Lord cursed that household or that line, like he did Eli. Okay, but other than that, the fathers would pay for their own sins. That's why it mentions here on to the 3rd and 4th generation, because that would be roughly around the time in which those fathers would come back on the earth again as those children, the process of reincarnation. And Moses made haste, so he hurried and bowed his head toward the earth and worshipped. And he said, If now I have found grace in thy sight, O Lord, let my Lord, I pray thee, go among us. So he was still beseeching the Lord to to go along with them, because the Lord had already said he would have his angel go, but he wouldn't dwell in the midst of Israel because they're wicked, of their stiff-necked and hard-headed ways would trigger him, and he would just end up consuming them. So nonetheless, Moses still requests, right, for him to go among us, for it is a stiff-necked people, and pardon our iniquity and our sin, and take us for thine inheritance. So from the past few chapters, you can sort of get the theme, right, that this is like, Israel having pissed off the Lord so bad by doing something really, really bad. And there's, we're in that state where, the initial wrath is sort of calmed down a bit, but there's still that moment where it's not back to how it was before, right? You can still tell that the Most High is like, distant or upset or not too happy, with this. It has left a bad taste. So, Moses is basically pleading on behalf of Israel to make good again with the Lord. And he said, Behold, I make a covenant before all thy people. I will do marvels, such as have not been done in all the earth, nor in any nation. And all the people among which thou art shall see the work of the Lord Yahweh. For it is a terrible thing that I will do with thee. The word terrible here does not mean terrible in a bad sense. It means something to be feared, okay? A fearful thing. Observe thou that which I command thee this day, so take heed to what I command you this day. Behold, I drive out before thee the Amorite, and the Canaanite, and the Hittite, and the Perizzite, and the Hivite, and the Jebusite, which were in the land, right, prior to us going there. Take heed to thyself, so be very careful, lest thou make a covenant with the inhabitants of the land whither thou goest. That's why he said, observe that which I command thee this day. Make sure that when you go into the land, you do not make any covenants with them. No agreements, no marriage agreements, no bonding, none of that. Why? Lest it be for a snare in the midst of thee, because it can become a trap. What that means is it is a slippery slope that's going to end you at a point of destruction. But instead, ye shall destroy their altars, break their images, which are their idols, and cut down their groves, those trees under which they would go and worship their idols. For thou shalt worship no other God, for the Lord Yahweh, whose name is jealous, is a jealous God. Now, the Most High's actual name is not jealous, but what it means when you go into the word name, as much as it is, a sound that you can refer to somebody by, it also means a reputation, right? Or a memorial or so on. So the Lord, in this case, is known for being a jealous God. Okay. As it says, so whose name is jealous is a jealous God. So he's known as part of that name or reputation, which is it's just something you're known for. But he's known for being a jealous God, meaning he doesn't tolerate idolatry. Okay, and he is a jealous power. So be very, very careful with that. Lest thou make a covenant with the inhabitants of the land, and they go a whoring after their gods, and do sacrifice unto their gods, and one call thee, and thou eat of his sacrifice. See? Because if you go and you make a covenant with them, and then when they go and start worshiping their idols, they invite you, and you go and you eat of their sacrifice. Now look at the trap that you're falling in, because you want to make a covenant with them. So don't do it. And And thou take of their daughters unto thy sons, and their sons go a whoring after Slakia, and their daughters go a whoring after their gods. So that's when they go and worship their gods, and make thy sons go a whoring after their gods. This is what the Lord is concerned with. Okay. Now this doesn't mean that you cannot have like a heathen as a concubine, which is a lesser wife. But what the Lord is warning of here is when you go into the land, if you go and you make these deals and covenants with them, what's going to happen is when you start to marry their daughters, they will lead you astray. Okay, that's the problem, because if it was just about, having their women as concubines, then the Lord would have stopped there. He wouldn't have mentioned here, right? And make thy sons to go a whoring after their gods. That's the main subject matter here. Verse 17, thou shalt make thee no molten gods. Okay, so no idols. The feast of unleavened bread shalt thou keep. 7 days thou shalt eat unleavened bread, as I commanded thee. In the time of the month Abib, for in the month Abib thou camest out of Egypt. That is the month in which we kept the Passover. All that openeth the matrix is mine, right? Which is all the firstborns. So all that, the first to come out of the womb, that's opening the matrix, belong to the Lord. We went over that. Because remember, the Lord is given a repeat of the laws he gave before, the judgments he gave before. But Moses broke them because he was angry. And when I say broke them, I mean he broke the actual tablets in which they were that the Lord had given him the testimony on it. He ended up breaking it, so now he has to go and get a new one. All that openeth the matrix is mine, and every firstling among thy cattle, whether ox or sheep, that is male, that is the Lord's. Okay. But the firstling of an ass thou shalt redeem with a lamb. So if you have a ass that has a firstborn male, that is the Lord's, but it's a ransom, right? You need to bring a lamb to redeem it. Then you can use it and it'll be yours. And if thou redeem him not, if you don't do that, then shalt thou break his neck. So it cannot be you can't use it. All right, it's not yours. It belongs to the Lord. And you didn't give a ransom for it, so you're going to need to break its neck. All the firstborn of thy sons thou shalt redeem. You don't have an option there. And none shall appear before me empty, i.e. without an offering. 6 days thou shalt work, but on the 7th day thou shalt rest. In earing time, which is the time of plowing, and in harvest thou shalt rest. So regardless of the season, the Sabbath is the Sabbath. And thou shalt observe the feast of weeks, of the first fruits of wheat harvest, which is the feast of first fruits, and the feast of ingathering at the year's end, which is the feast of tabernacles. Thrice, which is 3 times in the year, shall all your men children appear before the Lord Yahweh, or in other words, all your males, the God of Israel. And that's for the feast of unleavened bread, the feast of first fruits, and the feast of tabernacles. For I will cast out the nations before thee, and enlarge thy borders. Neither shall any man desire thy land, when thou shalt go up to appear before the Lord Yahweh, thy God, thrice in the year. So this is on condition that we fear the Lord and follow his judgments. And he's going to drive the nations out from before us, increase our border, and with the nations gone, we won't have to worry about any of them coveting our land or trying to come and conquer us, prohibiting us from going to serve the Lord as he requires. Thou shalt not offer the blood of my sacrifice with leaven. So when you bring the sacrifice onto the Lord, you're not supposed to bring it with leaven goods, unless the Lord specifically mentions that, which he hasn't here. Neither shall the sacrifice of the feast of the Passover be left unto the morning, right? Which we know that, right? And if the Passover lamb, right, if there's anything left of it in the morning, you have to burn that. The first of the first fruits of thy land thou shalt bring unto the house of the Lord thy God. Thou shalt not seethe a kid in his mother's milk, which we also went over that as well, which is basically a kid, a baby goat that is still being breastfed. It hasn't been weaned yet, right? You're not to, when you seethe, it's to cook, all right? So you're not to cook that. And the Lord Yahweh said unto Moses, write thou these words, for after the tenor of these words have I made a covenant with thee and with Israel. And I'll read this in the NLT. But it's basically, this is the contract, right? Then the Lord said to Moses, write down all these instructions, for they represent the terms of the covenant I am making with you and with Israel. And he was there with the Lord 40 days and 40 nights. He did neither eat bread nor drink water. Damn, that's over a month. And he wrote upon the tables the words of the covenant and the 10 commandments. And you know, this is one, you had we were stronger, right? And you know, our bodies were much stronger back then. So was more likely to be possible back then than now. Don't try it now. Okay. But also, you know, really whatever whatever he needed to be sustained, the Lord could just give him without him eating or drinking. Right. There's an account even a long time after this time period, right? Hundreds of years after this, where on the account of Elijah, an angel brought him food, and it says he went on that strength, right? I forgot how long exactly it was, but it was quite a long time. You know, so there goes to explain that it's not the same now. The earth doesn't yield as good or healthier foods now, and your body is definitely not in the condition for that. Verse 29, and it came to pass when Moses came down from Mount Sinai with the 2 tables of testimony in Moses' hand, when he came down from the mount, that Moses wist not that the skin of his face shone while he talked with him. So while he was up there on the mount, you know, speaking with the Lord, his face started to shine. But when he came down, he didn't realize it, right? He didn't even know that was the case. And when Aaron and all the children of Israel saw Moses, behold, the skin of his face shone. So it was very bright. It was like shining. And they were afraid to come nigh him. And Moses called unto them, and Aaron and all the rulers of the congregation returned unto him, and Moses talked with them. So they're like, yo, you know, we don't know what's going on here. Like, you looking kind of scary, man. But after he spoke with them, you know, everything, they calmed down and everything. And afterward, all the children of Israel came nigh, and he gave them in commandment all that the Lord Yahweh had spoken with him in Mount Sinai. Until Moses had done speaking with them, he put a veil on his face. So meaning while he was speaking with them, he put a veil on his face because, you know, his face was shining so bright. It was probably fearful for them. But when Moses went in before the Lord to speak with him, he took the veil off until he came out. So whenever Moses would go speak with the Lord, he would take that veil off and speak with the Lord. But whenever he would come back, because his face was shining, he would put that veil on. And he came out and spake unto the children of Israel that which he was commanded by the Lord. And the children of Israel saw the face of Moses, that the skin of Moses' face shone. And Moses put the veil upon his face again until he went in to speak with him, that is, to speak with the Lord. And that brings us to the end of Exodus, the 34th chapter. Lord willing, that was edifying to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham Yahweh Shai, Bahasham Recha Kudash. Until next time, Shalom.